I just can't stop scrolling.
Snap out of it, man. You're doom scrolling again.
Doom scrolling?
Yeah, you remember a while back when you were on a website, you had to click at the bottom of a page to actually get to the next page.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah, a programmer realized that all he had to do was make a code that made it so that when you hit the bottom of your scroll page, that it simply reloaded to the next page, and boom, you have an infinite scroll. The downside to that is there's no longer a reload button at the bottom, which means that you don't actually ask yourself, hey, do I want to continue on to the next page? It just happens automatically. It's almost like they've figured out how to bypass your choice and hardwire directly into your impulses.
Huh, that's genius.
Now, what really makes it doom scrolling is that every social media platform's algorithm is optimized to garner as much of your attention as possible. That's how social media platforms actually make money. The longer you're on their website, the more content you're viewing for longer periods of time, the more money they make. So ultimately, what we're talking about is an attention economy, where your attention is actually worth money.
I guess I gotta be more careful with how I spend my attention.
Absolutely. See, it's not that people like extreme content. It's not that people like negative content. It's that that content works to keep their attention. It's that when they see that content, it draws them in. It's interesting. It's provocative. A lot like a train wreck. When you see a train wreck, you don't want to watch, but you can't really look away. And so when you're viewing negative content and you scroll and it's more negative content and you scroll and it's more negative content, you can see why I would call that doom scrolling.
Oof.
I wish that was the worst part.
What could be worse than doom scrolling?
With everybody scrolling down their own doom holes, you end up with an ever-widening perception gap.
What's that?
Where human beings actually have a hard time even understanding the opposing viewpoints anymore. Where they get so far away from common ground with other people that it actually starts to degrade our ability to communicate on a basic level. You can see this on the Congress floors. You can see this in every echelon of our society, from our social network all the way to the tippy tops of our government.
It's like a runaway train to the center of a lizard brain.
You say a runaway train to the center of a lizard brain? Runaway train to the center of a lizard brain. And all that from a fairly standard algorithm. It's not AI. That's not even general AI. It's just an incredibly simple bot-powered program. If we don't step in and start regulating the AI market now, while we understand how these most basic programs work and start getting regulations into how these general AI platforms are actually conducting themselves, both in our markets as well as in our government, we can already see the echoes. And because of that, we can see regulation being much harder to enforce, let alone even talk about, because of how closely intertwined each and every one of us is with these algorithms, with these platforms, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, all of these. They're so intertwined in our life, it's difficult to regulate now, after the fact. You know, and we all have that with our friends, whether it's the office memes or whether it's just, you know, us sharing our meme pics of the day on Discord, whatever that may be. The issue is that without regulation before we have a problem, what ends up happening is that the technology moves so quick that regulation has a hard time catching up to what's happening. If you can imagine a world where your grandmother is called by an AI-generated version of you that sounds exactly like you that says, Grandma, what's your social security number? I need it for this college application, for a loan application, whatever the case may be, to then dupe your grandmother into her pension in the guise of you. Because how could she tell the difference? The problem isn't just that it's easy like that. Like,
this is the most basic level of crime
we're talking about here. Like, if somebody ever pointed AI at something terrible like chemical weapons, see, the problem is not AI. AI is a beautiful thing. And when used by people who care about others and care about our society, it's probably going to cure cancer. Let's be real. The downside is if these people with less good goals, people with negative goals, use those to facilitate their negative goals. What we need is regulation that stops just any old person from getting their hands on this. I'm saying that it should be fairly simple. Like, we're talking about AI registration here. We're talking about basic guardrails that are in place that can't simply be removed. We're talking about just simply making AI so it can't be misused. The sooner the better. That's the important part. Without doing this now, before there's a problem, we will end up in a position where we are today, where we see the repercussions in our society with all of these fractures between us, with all our community in shambles, with our family unit in shambles, and we look around and we're all like really worried about our future. So we absolutely need to be proactive in a way that we just haven't before. And it's very, very important. Like, the fate of humanity kind of depends on it, guys.
It's like a runaway train to the center of Elizabeth.